Hey y'all, welcome to episode 10, The Tower We Built. The story of Babel, human unity, and the illusion of separation. There are times when people can look deeply connected on the outside while becoming disconnected underneath. Everyone speaks the same language, everyone moves in the same direction. Everyone believes they're building something meaningful together. And from the outside, it can look like progress, stability, and unity. But underneath that shared movement, identity slowly starts becoming tied to systems, to image and control, instead of relationship and connection. You can see this happen in families, in communities, and in countries, and even within yourself. Sometimes people become so focused on building something externally that they slowly lose touch with what's happening internally. That's the story the world of Babel steps into. The story isn't about God fearing human progress or punishing people for working together. It's a it's a story about humanity trying to reach heaven through structure, through power, and through self-created identity instead of alignment with the divine. Think about that for a moment. You know, the story begins by saying the whole earth had one language and one speech. In Hebrew, the phrase is sapa echad, which means one shared expression or one shared understanding of reality together. Humanity is moving as one body with one direction and one purpose. The people settled together in the land of Shinar, and they decided to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. And then they say something that's really important. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered across the earth. That phrase matters. The Hebrew word for name is shem, and it can mean reputation, identity, essence, or even legacy. So humanity is no longer simply living within creation and within those relationships. The tower becomes symbolic of humanity trying to secure itself through what it creates. Ancient towers like Babel existed throughout Mesopotamia. They were quite often sacred structures meant to connect heaven and earth. But something feels different about this story. Humanity isn't waiting for a connection with the divine to emerge naturally through humility and relationship. Instead, it attempts to ascend through effort, through organization and centralized control. And that changes the meaning of everything. What makes the story powerful is that the people are unified externally while quietly becoming disconnected internally. Everyone speaks the same words, everyone participates in the same vision. But underneath all of that is fear. The fear of being scattered, fear of losing identity, and simply the fear of uncertainty. And as we know, fear can create very convincing forms of unity. People can move together while slowly losing themselves underneath. Structures can become substitutes for genuine connection, and systems can become replacements for spiritual alignment. That tower slowly becomes symbolic of humanity attempting to reach heaven without transformation. Then the story shifts. God comes down to observe the city and the tower, and the response is quite often misunderstood. The text doesn't present God as threatened by human creativity or cooperation. Human creativity has always been part of the design. The concern is what humanity is becoming while fully, while fully unified around ego and centralized power. Then the language is confused. The Hebrew word connected to Babel is balal, meaning to mix or to confuse. But the confusion here feels a lot deeper than vocabulary alone. Humanity loses the ability to truly hear one another. Shared understanding begins breaking apart, and the external unity collapses because the deeper inner alignment was already falling, was failed long before the languages changed. And then humanity scatters across the earth. This matters because Babel isn't just an ancient story, it's describing a pattern that still repeats itself throughout daily human life. People still build towers. Sometimes those towers are political, sometimes they're religious, and sometimes they're personal. Entire groups can become unified around fear while believing they're building something sacred. People can say the same words while no longer truly understanding one another. They can belong to the same systems while quietly losing empathy, humility, and connection. And often the fracture begins internally, long before it becomes visible externally. That's the deeper warning inside Babel. Not that humanity should stop building or creating, but that external structures can never replace inner alignment. Power cannot create wholeness, and no tower built from fear will ever reconnect humanity to heaven. Maybe that's why humanity is scattered in the story, not simply as punishment, but as interruption. The towers stopped before the illusion becomes complete, before humanity fully mistakes control for communion and structure for physical wholeness. The story leaves humanity dispersed across the earth, carrying different languages, different perspectives and identities. But maybe underneath, maybe that fragmentation is also an invitation to stop building upward long enough to reconnect inward, to remember that real unity cannot be manufactured externally, and to realize that becoming whole will always matter more than building higher. One love, y'all.